And welcome back, everyone. I hope that I'm live. I haven't been streaming quite some time, so let me know in the chat if you can see and hear me. But it looks like everything is going well, so that's at least a nice surprise. I can already see that some people joined the stream, so welcome to everyone. It's been quite a long time since we had a stream. But I thought it's quite a nice idea to celebrate the 5,000 subs with the stream, where you guys can just ask me basically anything you're looking forward to asking me. So everything is working well. That's great. Welcome to all the people who have already joined. Hi, Peter. Great that you're at the stream as well. Great to see you. So yeah, what I planned for today, I mean, I did write a couple of things also on YouTube. What are my intentions? But the main thing is that if you guys have any questions overall, if it's chess related or not, then just shoot basically, and I'll give my best to try and answer them. So that's basically it. And I also already saw quite a couple of questions on YouTube. So many of you have already commented and commented your questions on YouTube. So yeah, I would start by going through them. 5K subs, but only 8 viewers who came on time. Yeah, that's how it is. But I'm guessing that that some more people are gonna join in later. But I hope that the time is at least sort of okay for most of you guys, because it's always not so easy with different time zones. Especially that some of my followers are from India. I guess it's already quite late there, but I still hope that some of you guys can still watch. And of course, the other thing is, like, if I would be streaming in the morning, then it would be quite difficult for people from the United States to join in. So I hope that this time is sort of agreeable for most of you guys. First question, how are you? I'm doing quite well. There are a lot of things currently going on in my life, but overall I'm doing quite well. On Monday, actually, I'm going to, well, I'm staying in Austria, but I'm gonna comment the FIDE Women's Grand Prix, which is quite a serious event, and I'm really looking forward to it. Because it's actually my first time commenting an event in person. Usually I was doing it from home, but I'm gonna be there. And even on one day, I am probably gonna be commenting with Vishwanathan Anand, which is gonna be pretty exciting. So yeah, gonna be an awesome event for sure. Also, the place where it is very, very nice. It's like at some sort of castle, so it's gonna be a very nice event. It starts on Tuesday. So yeah, Peter is at work. Perfect timing. Well, combining work and my stream sounds like a good idea. So hope you'll enjoy the stream, and I hope that it will give you some good time while you're at work. So yeah, guys, thank you. I'm doing well. I can already see a couple of questions in the live chat, which is good, because, well, today is just so that we guys can just have a good time and talk. And if you have any also opening related questions, that was what I was going for as well. Like, if you have any opening related questions, I already sort of prepared this layout here. So whenever you guys have any opening questions, I'm ready to jump there. Because yeah, that's what I was basically saying, that I want to copy Jan's opening clinic from back in the day, because his concept was really, really amazing. And I think nowadays there is nothing like that anymore. So yeah, opening questions, guys, just shoot. I can already see one recommended repertoire against 1d4. Well, you can definitely check out the repertoire which I released just a couple of days ago. I think it was 2 days ago. So, which is the Nimzo and Rogozin. This is for my supporters, the video I made. And yeah, if you're interested in joining, I'm actually making sort of a big repertoire course every month for my supporters on YouTube. So yeah, I think it's quite a lot of value. I mean, I put in quite a lot of work to prepare those openings. And for example, last month I shared a video on the French, so giving you guys a full repertoire on that. So yeah, I think that's overall a pretty good deal, I would say. So yeah, you can check that out for sure. Otherwise, in many of my other videos, I have many different recommendations of game recaps where I go into the different opening lines. So there's quite a lot of information out there. In general, I would really recommend going for the King's Indian. Like if you're more of a beginner maybe still and sort of on the verge to becoming an amateur, then I think the King's Indian is a nice opening to look into. I'm actually planning to make a video on that sometime near in the future. And I'm also going to make a chess-based course on the King's Indian, which, yeah, I'm not quite sure yet when it's going to come out. Probably like in half a year, maybe a year. So there's still some time for that. But the King's Indian is quite nice because you can play it against 1d4. And you can also play it against 1c4 and 1 knight f3. So it's quite a universal opening. So yeah. But of course, there are many different lines which are playable. Would you say you have aura? I have no idea. I have no idea. That's for you guys to judge. So yeah. Kerem is writing, I just came to Vienna to travel yesterday, and people were partying in front of the Imperial Palace, or is it because of 1st May is the Workers' Day? Yeah, actually, I was in the inner city today as well, and there are many tourists already in Vienna, which kind of surprised me because it's not summer yet. But it seems like there are already quite a lot of tourists. Like there's this sort of central place in Vienna, the Stephansdom. I think it's called like that in English as well. And that place was, it's the St. Stephen's Cathedral, that's the English name. And that place was fully packed with people. So I guess that's simply that, yeah, already many tourists are coming here. I think that's how it is. What would be your question for Vishy Anand? Yeah, that's gonna be tough. I mean, honestly, I have to say, if I'm commenting with Vishy, I'll probably gonna be quite nervous for that. Because, well, he's just such a legend, and yeah, I need to think of some questions. Let me know in the chat, guys, if you have any questions which I can ask Vishy. By the way, Mateprof, thank you for becoming a supporter. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting me. Hello, Felix. I got inspired by you to make my YouTube channel and videos. That's great to hear. Always love seeing people who are getting inspired and just like to produce more content for people to enjoy. So that's always nice to hear, and it's perfect that I was even an inspiration for you. So that's really cool to hear. Which opening do you think is better for the improving club player? Exchange Queen's Gambit Declined or the Catalan? Well, if you play the Exchange Queen's Gambit Declined, then I guess you also have to get ready for the Nimzo Indian. But I still would say that going for the classical Queen's Gambit is probably a better idea than the Catalan overall. Because in general, what I also recommend to all of my students, especially if they're not like on a master level yet, is to mostly go for like pretty classical openings, I would say, because, well, you can play all these gambits, but I don't think you will improve in the long run like that. Like you're going to have a couple of nice wins with that, but at some point you're going to stop simply improving because, well, you need to play some more some lines which also help you just understand chess better. And I think that going for the Nimzo or the Queen's Gambit exchange would be a good approach for that. So, hey Felix, this week's content was great. Congrats for the 5K. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm honestly quite happy that I am able to sort of keep my promise to produce one video or one live stream per day. But yeah, it takes a lot of time, but it's also very enjoyable for me to do that for you guys, and it's just a way of saying thank you for all the support you're showing me. And now that I'm talking about support, I'm seeing that MatheProf upgraded membership to VIP patron. So thank you a lot for that. I hope you enjoy all the perks you get. And yeah, I hope you enjoy especially the videos I made for the repertoire videos, where the most amount of work went into. So yeah, still 2 more days. By the way, I made sort of a plan for the last remaining 2 days. So for tomorrow, I have planned, but guys, let me know if you have any other better suggestions. For tomorrow, I planned a video on swindling. So sort of if you're in a bad situation, then how to swindle your opponent. So how to get sort of a draw or even a win out of a bad or winning position. So that was the idea for tomorrow. But let me know what you guys think about that. And for Sunday, I was thinking to make a video on King's activity, which is also quite an interesting topic, I would say. Like when I was little, I saw this game of Nigel Short. Actually, let me pull that up quite quickly. I guess that most of you guys will know it, but it's still just such a nice example that I'm gonna pull it up right now. Short against Timon. I guess that most of you guys are gonna know it. It's just such a cool example. Like when I first saw it, it just stuck to me for forever, basically. Is it that one? No. That's not it either. Wow, they have so many games against each other. That's not it either. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I think I got it now. Yeah. So I'm already gonna spoiler it perhaps if I'm gonna make a video, but anyway, I'm just gonna show it. So this is the game I'm referring to. Just give me 1 moment. I'll do it like this. But first I'm gonna go through a couple of more questions. Yeah, Felix Bakery, you're right, but I'm not gonna spoiler it just yet. So we're gonna get there in a second. Liquid bishop after knight f3, d5, b3, knight f6, bishop b2, c6. White has to commit to e3 or g3 setups. Which is better? Yeah, that's a hard question to answer right now. I mean, in the video which I showed, like the opening video, which was now I think 1 week back or so, I was mostly focusing on e3 there. So I think if you go e3 here, you don't really have a downside. Even though now black could go for bishop g4. But he already has to c6. So my guess would be that e3 in that move order works pretty well for white. But of course g3 is playable as well. But definitely check out my video for e3 because there was actually a very cool idea. It's the video called Best Opening Ideas of 2025 so far. So yeah, how would you approach getting better at chess with 2000 ELO, achieving the FM title? I mean, I've been saying this in almost every stream. I've always been working with a lot of different books. I've been saying this for the 100th time now, but Mark Dvoretsky and Artur Yusupov's books have helped me tremendously. And actually, from this jump to 2000 to 2300, like I was also in that situation. And what has helped me was mostly Artur Yusupov's books. So just studying them carefully. And after that, I gained a lot of rating and made the FIDE Master title. Hi Vlad, welcome to the stream. Great that you're here. d4, knight f6, c4, b6 is holding. Oof, not a great line, even though many people are playing it now. Like there was this funny idea there, which I'm gonna show in a second. Will you be commenting something with Anand? Yeah, that's what I mentioned before. I'm gonna be commenting the FIDE Women's Grand Prix in Austria. Is it possible to play with you? In today's stream, we will not have any viewer games since I think that many people are gonna have opening questions, so we're gonna go through them mostly. But for now, I wanted to show you this example right here. Let me just pull it up. So that's the example I was referring to when we're talking about king activity. I guess that most of you guys have seen that already, but that was how the game went. So Nigel Short was white, and Jan Timman was black, and this is sort of the position we're starting with. So let me know, guys, if you have any ideas what you would play here with the white pieces, in case you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, then yeah, maybe don't spoiler the guys, the other people. Any ideas? In the meanwhile, while you guys are thinking, I can answer some more questions. Do you have a recommendation against the Grunfeld around 2100 FIDE and every Grunfeld? I either play bishop c4, forget everything and lose a Russian system, get a draw without a fight. Yeah, Grunfeld is tough. I can show you an idea or a couple of ideas which I had after we look at this one. If I forget, please just remind me, because there are quite a couple of things. There was also one user asking about d4, knight f6, c4, b6, which we're gonna check out later. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to it, but please, in case I forget about it, just let me know again. Rui Lopez or Italian, tough decision. Vienna, I wouldn't go for. I mean, you can play the Vienna sometimes, but it's not like a long-term opening. I would go for the Rui Lopez. That's just my personal choice. I mean, for me, it was always quite hard to understand the Italian. Like, there are just so many different finesses there. And the Rui Lopez, I mean, it's also highly strategical, but at least there are sort of, the plans are more clear in most cases. That was sort of always my experience. So yeah, most of you guys have already figured it out. How long till the kit for members? I'm not sleeping till it's out. Yeah, for this month, I released the Nimzo Bogo Indian, because that was just something I always wanted to do. And I also had the most experience in that opening, so it seemed sort of more natural to start with that. But I remember your comment about it, and I'm really sorry that I didn't release it that month, but it's for sure something which I'm gonna do in the near future. So yeah, about the example, most of you guys probably have seen it, and the move which Nigel Short played is King H2, which still looks sort of like a logical idea, a logical move, just putting the king to perhaps a safer square. But what was Nigel Short's idea actually is just to run with the king to H6, which, yeah, I saw this example when I was like, I don't know, 8 years or something, and it just always stuck with me, because it's just such a nice idea. Black is fully paralyzed, he cannot do anything else. But for white, otherwise, it's quite hard to actually break through, because he can never move his knight, because then there would be sort of an unpleasant surprise on g2. Can also never play g4, because then f3 is hanging. And otherwise, the rooks are already placed perfectly. So that's just how, I guess, Short then came up with this brilliant idea of bringing the king. And yeah, Timman didn't really see a plan. I also think that the position is just completely lost, because black simply doesn't have anything here. And after king g5, he resigned, because bishop d7, king h6, and queen g7 is checkmate on the next move. So yeah, that's just a fantastic example. I really like that game. So yeah, let me go to some opening questions. All right. So we got a new board. I just need to figure out how to place the chat so I can see it. Give me 1 second, please. Just adjusting the chat so I can see all of you guys commenting. Yeah, that's crazy to see in a real game, yeah. I actually had a similar idea in one of my games, which I really liked. I had one similar game where I also had this King March, which was also very pleasant to have in a real game, to say the very least. Okay, so. Okay, I hope the layout is fine now. Still not perfect. All right, now it should be better. But now at least I can see the board and I can see you guys commenting as well. So I hope this is good. Let me know what you think about the setup. So let's go to some questions. One user asked before about d4 knight f6 c4 b6, which, yeah, quite a lot of people have been playing now. I mean, the one question is, like, my issue with this was that there is just nothing better after knight f3 to go to the normal Queen's Indian, as far as I understood. What people have been trying, I mean, I guess that this system is aimed to sort of avoid the Nimzo, which was never really a problem for me because I always like to play against the Nimzo. But yeah, that could be one idea to play against that. But simply white has many options. Like f3 is also quite a serious move in this position to just get e4. And yeah, this line is something which some people have been playing, this knight c6 here. Knight f3, knight b4, and I think they play like this, bishop f3. And I think now they go for g6, I think. There have been some games here, if I'm not... yeah, this is how they played. Erigaisi was one of the people who played like that. I mean, the computer gives like 0.8 for white here. Still, black players had pretty good results here because it turns out the white's position is not so easy to play, even though he has the bishop pair and a huge center. But yeah, this is something you could look into. But there are a couple of issues, like here, white could take with the e-pawn. I think I checked this briefly, which then, yeah, it just didn't seem like it's that great for black overall. But of course, in this position, you could also go for d5. That was another option. But yeah, overall, not a big fan of this b6 line overall. Yeah, let me head on to James' question. Do you have a recommendation against the Grunfeld? Yeah, the Grunfeld, of course, is always tough. You can check out my video on the d4 repertoire where I recommended this line with knight bd2, which is quite nice against Grunfeld players. I mean, King's Indian players are probably going to care less because they anyway are going to play for d6. And this position is also quite playable. I would also enjoy it with white. But Grunfeld players overall would probably be less happy here because they are not used to playing with d6 in most cases. So what Grunfeld players are going to do in most cases is going d5, and then I presented b3 in that video. And actually many black players ran into some trouble here. The position is not as easy as it looks. So this is definitely something to look into. If you're starting with c4 though, like if you want to get the Nimzo, for example, then of course it becomes a bit more theoretical in most cases. I can still recommend you this line e3, which has the point if black goes for d5 now, trying to get the Grunfeld, then white can take. And after e4, black doesn't have knight takes e3. So now even though white loses the tempo, this is sort of good for white because he cannot take on c3, sort of ruining white's pawn structure. And here white has some chances for an advantage in most cases. So yeah, that's sort of the easiest things you could check in the Grunfeld. In general, I like the systems with e3. You could also go for something like this, which is also not entirely naive. Like this line is also not bad. cd5, knight d5, bishop c4. Most people take on c3, and then we get some sort of less theoretical position. Like you don't have the pawn on e4 yet, so it's a bit more positional. Black cannot attack the pawn on d4 now so easily. White has some ideas like a4, bishop a3, for example, or slowly prepare e4. So this is also something less theoretical. Yeah, let's see if there are any other questions. I think I've already missed quite a lot of your guys's comments. So where did we stop? Do you play Title Tuesdays and Freestyle Fridays? Yeah, I used to, but now not as much because I'm simply lacking the time. Like, I'm also not streaming that much because it simply takes a lot of time, even though I really enjoy it. So really want to do it more in the future, especially Freestyle Fridays or Freestyle chess in general. Like today I was thinking, I actually never played a Chess 960 game in my entire life online. I only played a couple of games with my friends over the board, but in fact I never played a single Chess 960 game online, which is sort of ridiculous. And I've really always wanted to do it, but somehow then I'm just forgetting about it, and my mind is just only consumed by the classical chess for some reason still. But I really want to try it out, even if it's just some casual games. So, The Wandering Pawn asks a question. Hello, Felix. I'm very strong at Rapid 2300 leeches, but I struggle with focus, discipline, and planning in classical. How would you recommend I improve in my classical chess? Yeah, if you're mostly struggling with focus, discipline, and planning. Well, actually, this topic of focus is quite a good thing that you're saying it, because I saw quite a few people commenting about it. And it's really hard to give like a straightforward fix to focus. Like, I guess that all chess players are sometimes having issues with focusing, because you just cannot stay focused for a whole 5 hours in a chess game in most cases. I mean, some people can do that, but it's extremely hard. So the thing you need to figure out is how to stay as focused as you can possibly be. There will always be moments where you're not fully focused. Like, this happens to everyone. I guess that you also need some breaks in a game. Like, you cannot be focused for 5 hours straight. Otherwise, at some point, your mind will just burst. So what I do sometimes, like especially after the time control, for example, is just to stand up, go away from the board and just relax for a couple of minutes. Maybe eat a snack, drink a tea, drink a coffee, something like that. But yeah, okay, with like to improve your focus in general, I'm not sure what I can tell you. I've been doing a lot of research into supplements in general. I know this is sort of not the right fix. The fix should come from inside of you. Like, it should be some sort of mindset change that your focus should improve because you want to become better at classical. I think that's the way to think about it. Like, it seems to me like you want to be much better in classical, but it should be then sort of natural to increase your focus and discipline, because your goal is to become better at classical, and you know what you need to do to do that, and that's focus, discipline, and planning. So yeah, that's, I guess, the best way to think about it. I was thinking about going into the topic of supplements, but I think it's sort of a wrong way to start it. Why I was just thinking about it is because I've done a lot of research myself into it, because it can also help like with focus. For example, caffeine can help you quite a lot with focus. That's one of the more simple supplements, which, I mean, I usually drink a coffee while I play chess, which helps me quite a lot with just staying alert. So you can also look into that. So yeah. I think I missed so many questions, so let me go through as many as I can. So yeah, I've already answered Tiramato. The King's Indian is hopefully going to be out soon as well. But I also didn't want to release it now because I simply didn't feel comfortable making a video right now, because I haven't checked the King's Indian in some time. And if I want to make a video for the members especially, but the video in general, then I really want to know what I'm actually talking about. So that was another reason. I just didn't feel comfortable sharing it yet. So thank you for your understanding. Can Hans be the best Italian player? What do you think? Hans is an excellent Italian player. I studied many of his games. He showed very nice preparation in many of his games as well. So Hans is a great Italian player. Also, Kramnik had many fantastic games. Magnus as well, of course. So there are a couple of players to learn from in the Italian, and also like there have been so many developments in the Italian as well. Like now people are playing all the time this line with knight c3, which actually turns out to be quite tricky. A couple of days ago, I saw another game. I think it was Daniel Darda who had it with the black pieces. With the white pieces. Let me just think. I think it was something like this. And here black played short castle, which was actually already a big mistake, because the game continued something like this, and black actually got in a lot of danger with this plan with rook g1 and g4. So didn't even take on e6, because it turns out like this. Black is actually quite unhappy if the f file doesn't open up, and black doesn't really have any counterplay here, it seems. So I was checking some things like this as well. So definitely a nice new direction to look into if you're interested in the Italian, but don't want to go into sort of the deep waters in c3. Like for some of you guys who are watching, this might be interesting. Like I learned this probably after I was a FIDE master even, which nowadays I guess is common knowledge, but some of you might still find it useful. So the whole concept of the Italian is, well, there are a couple of things to follow. The first thing is that let's just say black goes a6 here. You don't want to play h3 when black hasn't castled yet. You never really want to do that, because now black always has the option to go h6 and g5. And then he has this hook with g4. Okay, so let's say we go through this move order. Let's say knight d2, bishop a7, and now white goes h3, then comes h6, and something like this can be surprisingly dangerous for white, because g4 is coming, and then the g file is opening up. I don't know, here I guess knight g4, and rook g8 is coming, queen f6 is coming. So you never really want to play h3 if black hasn't castled yet. That's sort of rule number one in the Italian, if you're looking at it from the white side. Rule number two is, let's just say black goes castle here and doesn't commit to the a pawn just yet. So of course there are systems like bishop g5, which are also quite topical nowadays, but I'm not going into that since it's just very concrete overall and very sharp. But the whole understanding here is that white only wants to play a4 once black has played a6. So for example, theory continues knight bd2, and now if black goes a6, well, he has some ideas with knight a5 sometimes, especially after h3, bishop a7. Now he's sort of threatening to take the bishop on c4, win the bishop pair like this. So once a6 comes, in most cases, then you want to play a4, because now you're getting ready also to gain space on the queen side. So now you could ask, why not just play a4 right away? And because when you're anyway going to play it, the reason is because now black is going to play a5 in one move, and now he sort of stopped you to gain any space on the queen side. And if black plays, let's say after knight bd2 a5, then you're not going to play for a4. That's sort of the main idea. There are also ideas like, for example, h3 is one big move, a5, rook e1, bishop a7. This is one line I play with black quite a lot. And here there's this idea with knight a3, for example. So if black plays a5 early on, then he has the problem that the b5 square is weakened, and then white can often use that by either putting the bishop to b5 or the knight to b5. So I hope that makes sense, but those are sort of the golden rules in the Italian for me at least. Hope that was useful. So let's see what is more. Is Mora and Alapin a great surprise weapon against a Sicilian? I play open Sicilian as a main line. I'm confused of what against neither. For now, I play the Sozin. Yeah, I think the Mora is sort of outdated. Like back in the day, it used to be quite a good weapon, but nowadays there are just so many good options for black. And what is also the problem sort of is that black can also transpose to this variation of the Alapin as well, which now is gonna transpose to the Alapin. But of course, like in some variations, it's even hard to find equality. Like the last thing I checked for black was, I think, this approach with e6, then to just go bishop b4 and knight e7. I think that line was pretty clean for black as well. So if you go for something, I would definitely check the c3 Sicilian, the Alapin. Any suggestion what to play against the French? Well, I'm a big French player myself. As you know, I made the video on it. So it's not easy to find something clear-cut against it, actually. I used to be now sort of a fan of the exchange, which just suits my style very well, because it's just more positional. if some of you might have seen one player in the German Bundesliga played this line with h3 against me. If you're interested in that, then check it out. I did a recap on that. Just briefly, the idea is that if bishop d6, then c4 comes, and usually after c4, black wants to go bishop b4 check. So if white goes c4, then bishop b4 is the move. So that's sort of the idea, that now c4 white will get sort of a better version if black goes bishop b4, because h3 is very useful. But actually this line with bishop d3 is quite interesting. Like queen e2 check, queen e7 is one option, bishop e6 is another option. After queen e7, I think that white always keeps sort of a stable advantage. In general, you want to play castle, and then knight c3 is in most cases the idea. Like I think most players are playing rook e8, and then I think knight c3 was one of the ideas. Having some ideas with knight b5, and if c6, then often you want to play like knight e5, f4, or bishop f4. So this is quite interesting, but of course black has many different other setups, like now bishop e6, for example, which I still think is playable after knight g5 because white wins the bishop pair. Magnus had quite a couple of games here, which I think are nice to look at if you're interested in that. But also this line with knight c6 is quite difficult to find anything. Like bishop d3, bishop d6 is quite solid for black. I think my latest idea here was to go for knight c3, which is not as stupid as it looks. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. Yeah, other than that, I don't know what to actually recommend against the French. My long-term weapon was always sort of the Tarrasch, but black just has so many different options, which are all sort of okay, but I still like it, and I would still play it. Because with knight c3, well, I also played that quite a lot, but there's just so much theory and so much to know here. If you're a knight c3 player, I would recommend you look into bishop b4, ed5. That's quite an interesting line to go for this. Again, this is just my style, like to play sort of symmetrical positions. Nothing too complicated, but this is quite interesting. Hare Krishna made actually a very good course on that for Chessable a couple of years ago. And if knight f6, also Hare Krishna recommended this move knight c2 here, which I quite like, to be honest. He had a great course there. But yeah, otherwise this line, of course, is also quite theoretical. Black has just so many options here in the Steinitz. So I hope this was sort of helpful, at least some ideas for you to check out. I'm quite a big fan of the exchange nowadays. Yeah, you can also play the advance. That's also possible, yeah. Just that, again, black has just so many different setups. Like, well, you can play bishop d3 as well, which might be an interesting gambit to look into if you're more into some sharper stuff. This short castle is at least possible. Carissa Yip played against that like me, like 1 year ago. And this is certainly possible. But after bishop e2, the thing is just that black has so many options. You can go for the very sharp f6. You can go for knight e7, knight g6, knight e7, knight f5. You can wait with the knight on g8. So there are just many things. Any tips for tournament rated around 800? Prayson, Pandey. Yeah, I guess just try to enjoy it. I think that's the most important thing. If you're sort of new to chess, I would always recommend to sort of ease into it, not just get consumed by so much material. Just continue enjoying it. And yeah, that's the most important thing, because otherwise if you're doing too much, then at some point you're not going to enjoy it anymore. That's my theory. Didn't Short even get a brilliancy prize for that game before? Yeah, I guess so. Many brilliancy prizes for that. Would you recommend prioritizing one specific set of openings such as e4, or try to explore other ideas in different structures such as d4 or c4? Well, it was always my philosophy to stay as flexible as possible, to know many openings, but I think like that's only becoming quite useful if you're already like on IM or GM level. Before that, I would really recommend that you're getting as familiar as possible with one opening, and just try to learn that quite well and understand the plans. Peter asked a question before. I hope that, I don't know like how far behind I am. I think I'm quite far behind, but Peter asked, you're stranded on a deserted island. What one and only chess book do you bring? Or you can bring one chess player with you, who would it be? Well, chess book. I guess I would bring some chess book with studies because they're difficult to solve and it's gonna take a long time for me. So one like huge collection of studies, I guess I would take. I bought Agard's book on endgame studies. Those are quite thick. Like most of them are really, really hard to solve. So maybe I would take that one. And chess player, also difficult. I think that Levon Aronian would be a very pleasant and interesting person to share a deserted island with. Very intelligent and cultural person. So I would pick him. So let's see what other questions there are. Hi Felix, big fan of your content. Does it bother you that many chess content creators rely on sensationalism to get views over real educational content like what you provide? Well, first of all, thank you for that. I appreciate it that you that you're saying it's that I'm providing educational content. That's nice to hear. But I'm not like, I don't really mind. Yeah, like everyone has their own strategy when it comes to that. I just think that what I'm doing, I try to take it seriously and I try to actually provide value for you guys. And well, that's just what fulfills me. I wouldn't feel proud of myself if I would just clickbait all the time and do stuff like that. So this is just my philosophy, but it doesn't really bother me, I have to say. Like everyone has their own way of doing things. Hi Felix, in what situation do you feel the best when playing over the board chess? For example, when you're playing a high rated opponent in a slightly better position or where you're in a tricky line. I guess like in a very technical position, slightly better where I'm pushing, where I know the plans. So I would guess that's the case. At what level do you think people should get into all this opening talk? I believe that up to 2K your videos on easy openings are more than enough. Yeah, I would also say so. I guess you're referring to the premium videos, so the VIP patron videos. I guess they are already quite advanced. So there are some ideas in there which could even be useful for IMs or GMs, I would say. Like some of the ideas I'm showing in my videos can also be useful for title players, yeah. But I try to always sort of not get into it so much, like go too deep, because I understand that most of you guys are probably not on a GM level just yet. Hopefully you're going to be in the future. Well, I'm sure you're going to be in the future. So yeah. But to answer your question, well, openings become only more important later on. But nowadays it's sort of hard to live without it because everyone else is just so well prepared. So you just need to have sort of a stable repertoire in any case. So I think I'm just gonna go through your questions quickly now, what you've been writing, because I want to be up to date with the chat, and I've been so sort of going a bit too deep in the Italian, I guess. Apologies for that. So yeah, I'm back at the current chat, the live chat. So in case I overlooked any questions, please just post them again here. Because I also want to be interacting with you while you're writing and not just looking at previous comments. So. Let's see what you guys have. Congratulations on 5K. Which line in the English do you think is better, knight c3 or g3? I'm trying to decide which to look into. Thanks. Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, there are also other moves. Like I played d3 one time. I also wrote an article for ChessBase on e3, which is also quite interesting. But since your question is if you should go for knight c3 or g3, well, it depends what type of position you want to get. If knight c3, you have to worry about all these bishop b4 stuffs, like even bishop b4 right away is one option. I started usually by playing knight c3. I think it's maybe more of a better way to ease into the opening. And after knight f6, which most people play knight f3, knight c6, I started with this move e3, which is sort of the OG line here. And bishop b4, queen c2. And if short castle, there is knight d5, which is quite interesting. Rook e8 is sort of the main theory, and then queen f5 was one move. And also knight g5 is quite interesting with some ideas on h7. But just to give you like a brief overview, I mean, here you need to be familiar with e4. This gambit has been quite topical and actually not so easy. I think this is how people are playing here. So definitely check that out. And also bishop e4 on the second move. When after knight d5, they can play bishop e7, which is nowadays the main move. Also a5 is possible here. If you anyway go for the other line, then you can also try queen c2 here, which gives black some extra options, but it's just leading to a playable position. What do you think about the d3, bishop e2, f4 setups against the Sicilian and the French? Well, it's certainly playable. Computers don't really like it, but I think it's quite a nice way to play as well. Like, for example, against the Sicilian, something like that. I've seen also many grandmasters perform quite well with that. So let's say e6, f4. Also very, very, very much possible if you're looking for some sort of kingside activity, then this is definitely something to look into as well. And it also avoids theory. So this is another upside of that. Pascal, thank you for your donation. Wow, 50 euros. Thank you very much. Congrats to 5K subs again. Was not able to join earlier today. Great journey ahead. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, this line is also quite interesting. Of course, you're not going to get an objective advantage here, but at least you can try to surprise the opponent. And if you analyze it well, maybe with your coach, then you can perhaps know the plans better than your opponent. Recommendation against Najdorf and Rouser. Against the Najdorf, I analyzed one idea briefly in my best opening ideas of 2025 video. That was what Nihal played. This bishop e5 you can check out. And actually this could also be useful against a Rouser, because I guess that most Rouser players would go for that as well. So that was quite an interesting idea. It was this bishop d7, queen e2. This is something I checked. Definitely check out that video if you're interested in that. What do you think of the Grunfeld for under 2K FIDE? Why not? I don't think it's necessarily such an advanced opening. Like if you're maybe buy a book and go through some variations, or buy a course or look at some videos, I think it's certainly possible. I also remember I played the Grunfeld for the first time when I was like 1800 or something, maybe even less, when I was still like such a little boy. Played the Grunfeld once, and then didn't play it for like 10 more years, and then I lost. But that's how life is. How would you organize Black's play in Fantasy Caro-Kann after d, e, f, e, e5? I would glad to get your opinion about the most comfortable approaches. Great question. Caro-Kann Fantasy variation, still sort of a guest in top level play. Honestly, I never really like taking here and going e5. I mean, this line, for example, is sort of what white is trying to go for. This can be very dangerous for black. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, bishop g4 was sort of where the theory is heading towards nowadays. So if you want to take on e4, then I think this is what you want to look into. Black wants to develop like knight d7, knight f6, and put the bishop here and castle, something like that. But I was always more a fan of going something like e6, maybe also g6 is possible. But once I saw this line with, I think it was queen b6, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, wouldn't take on e4 necessarily. When you were improving to be at master level, which opening did you usually play? Actually, for a very long time, I played against D4 at least. I played the Nimzo and the Bogo, which if you've seen my VIP Patreon video, then you'll understand that I bought this one book by the German author Christoph Sielecki, and this was my huge inspiration to start with this opening, and I played it for many, many years. So the Bogo Indian and the Nimzo as well. So that was a very cool book. Like if you're sort of still on the amateur level, I would really recommend you to look into it. It's already an older book. I think it was released in 2016 or something, but still he explained the plans very, very well overall, I would say. And all the ideas appealed to me. So Christoph Sielecki, Nimzo, Bogo Indian, definitely a recommendation. Do you watch football? And if so, which teams do you support? Also, what's your opinion on Red Bull Salzburg? I don't really watch that many sports. Like, I love to do sports myself, but just don't really have the time to watch any of them myself. I did used to watch more soccer as well, but like also then only like the big matches, like some World Cup finale, or if Austria is playing in the World Cup, then I watch some matches as well. Back in the day, I was quite a Real Madrid fan because I always quite liked Ronaldo because he's just a very hard worker and therefore kind of an inspiration. And also not because of Ronaldo only, but also because Iker Casillas was there, the goalkeeper. Some of you guys know him. He, I think, retired for quite some time already. But he was always my favorite player because I used to be a goalkeeper as well in my soccer club when I was still younger. So yeah. But I'm not really familiar with Austrian teams that much, except for SK Rapid, who is like one of the biggest clubs in Vienna. But yeah, not such a big expert. What do you think of 5d3 against d6 Sicilians? Yeah, that's a nice question as well. I also saw that many people are playing that. So bishop d3 here, yeah, that was sort of a recent idea, which Sindarov played, as you said. The idea is in general that white wants to stay flexible and have the idea to push c4. So let's just say black goes g6, then white can go for c4 and then set up sort of a Maróczi bind. Bishop on d3 is probably not perfectly placed, but still the Maróczi is not so great that probably this is also still sort of a success for white because white just has a lot more space. If e5 also, I think knight e2 was the main idea, and then to get c4. So knight c6 is sort of the established move. And now I think white had two ideas. Bishop e3 was one to still have the option of c4. This allowed knight g4 though. The other, I guess, simpler option is to take here and then to go for some setup like b3, bishop b2, knight d2. Like usually this is how it goes. But I think black is also totally fine here. Might go something like knight h5 or knight e8. And yeah, doesn't look too bad for black. So if you're looking into this, I think that bishop e3 was more interesting here. Black had to go for something like this, and I checked some lines like this some time ago. I think bishop c3, and it went on. White has no advantage, but at least it was sort of interesting. Linda, welcome to the stream. Who is your dream opponent you always wanted to play against but haven't got the chance yet? Let's narrow it down to active players without Magnus. Okay, without Magnus, then it becomes a bit more difficult. Need to think about that one. So who's currently in the top 20 or so? Let me quickly check. It's not a question I can answer that easily. So there's Magnus, Nakamura, Gukesh, Erigaisi, of course, Fabi, Abdusattorov, Pragnananda, Valle, Nepomniachtchi, Firuza, Wesley. Yeah, I mean, they're all fantastic players, yeah? Like, it will be a pleasure to play against any of them. But who would be my favorite? Except for Magnus. I think that Aronian I would also pick maybe because he's also just a very interesting player as well. Aronian would be nice. I would like to play more of a positional player, like maybe Wesley So as well, just to get crushed positionally and learn a lot from it. Well, it's not like someone like Fabi is bad positionally. It's just that I guess that Wesley is sort of more well known for his very cautious style and being very positional. And Aronian is just you don't know what to expect from him. That's why it's quite interesting, I would say. I mean, if you consider Topalov active, then it would definitely be something as well. I was always a big fan of Topalov, so Ding Liren, of course, as well. But I would much prefer to play Ding Liren like a couple of years ago when he was in his prime, I would say. So yeah, not the perfect answer, but still hope you found it satisfactory. Let's see what else we got. Is it possible to build a repertoire for white based on one knight of 3 b3? Yeah, I was asking myself the same question quite frequently, and I guess you can do it. I mean, you will always have a playable position. Sometimes you might not have, yeah, an advantage, but I think you can do it. I just think, like, if d5 b3, this is certainly possible. If c5 b3, yeah, why not? And yeah, guess you can play it against anything. Maybe after g6, then you should probably not play b3, because then probably black gets quite a good game early on. But otherwise, yeah, why not, yeah? You also stay quite flexible. Like with b3, you have then the option to double fianchetto or to put the bishop on e2 or d3. So yeah, why not? Do you use online tactic trainers like Chess Tempo? Any thoughts on that versus books? Yeah, sometimes I do, but I always found it just more relaxing to work with books. Like also if you solve it online, often I'm having trouble that, like if I see a nice idea, I just play the idea without thinking much more, and I'm just checking if the solution is correct or not. And if I'm in front of a book, then I'm actually thinking like more, is that solution actually correct? And only then I check the solution, because it's somehow different for me on paper. So I still prefer to solve exercises on a book or on a chessboard. Any tip for a new chess YouTube channel? I'm at 150 subs. Yeah, just continue making content you enjoy. I mean, that's the most important thing, and which you also find like which you think that is useful for people, you know? Because I don't really see the point in trying to copy other ideas. I mean, copying other ideas is okay, or at least to get inspiration, but just to completely try to look what is successful for other people and just copy it without thinking about it, I don't think that's, maybe it works, but it's not the approach I would like so much. Yeah. How do you manage the uncertainty of being in an unfamiliar middle game when you don't understand all the plans at a lower level than GM after eventually being out of your opening prep? Well, that's sort of the natural course of a chess game, I would say. At some point, you're going to be out of preparation. And then you just need to think on your own, like, where do the pieces belong? Just sort of ask yourself more basic questions. I think that was also what I've been struggling with in the past time, that I'm thinking more too complicated in some cases. And in some cases, it's just actually nice to ask yourself, like, which king is safer, which pawn structure is better, which pieces are better activated, and where do my pieces actually want to go. So I think this is also something which I'm going to be doing more in the future, because you just need to ask those quite simple questions. Sometimes you just forget about them. At least that's happening to me. Yeah, I've been going through all of the questions, so sorry if there have been some delays. I see that we have some Real Madrid and Barca fans, so please don't fight in the chat. I guess that Naroditsky kind of assured in his speedrun series that 3 d takes e4, f e4, e5 is the best option that black may apply against fantasy. Thanks so much for your remarks. I mean, it certainly is a good option. I'm not saying that. It just seems like it's if you're not that familiar with it, then I think it can be quite dangerous. And if you're not so familiar with the line in general and you just want to get a game, I think it would be smarter to go for something like e6, queen b6, or maybe g6. Yeah, because here, if you forget something, then it can just be game over. Like here, for example, if you take on d4, bishop c4, I think this is very dangerous. And also this, I mean, I guess if you get all your pieces out like this, knight d7, knight f6, it's totally fine, but I think there are still some details you should know here. And yeah, I would assume that something else might be more practical, simply. Any ideas that you think are cool against the Italian? Yeah, I'm gonna get to that in a second. I'm just gonna drink some water, so just give me 1 second, guys. All right. Thanks for staying here, everyone. So, ideas against the Italian, yeah? We're gonna get there in a second. So, we've already been quite through a lot in the Italian. I can give you a couple of ideas. Like, after bishop c4, I guess the most interesting setup is to go for knight f6, and after d3, you have ideas like h6, when then you can go for ideas like g5. Also, bishop e7 is quite a nice system, which tends to be quite solid as well. So this is if you're looking for sort of a very calm game. Like there have been quite a few games here now when black has ideas with knight a5, so usually white goes a4. And now Magnus often played, I think, this h6, rook e8, bishop f8, then to get bishop e6, which I think is quite a nice idea. Also, knight a5 was always like the main move, but here white usually keeps some small edge because of the weakened d5 square, but it's also very playable. And what else is there? I think bishop g4 now is also very, very topical. Players go into this just and argue that bishop pair doesn't matter. Like they go c6 and then knight e6, queen d7. But I don't really like the system so much. It looks a bit wrong to just give up the bishop, even though that the engine agrees, yeah. But this looks interesting. There was also always this line with king h8, which I think is sort of forgotten by now. The idea is, let's just white goes h3. The idea is often to go knight g8. And then just push f5. So something like this is sometimes the idea. But yeah, I don't know if the engines are liking it so much. Like here, maybe there's d4. I don't know about this, but e4 might work, yeah. And if knight e4, there could be d5. So those are a couple of ideas here. In general, I would like to maybe surprise the opponent by not going bishop c5. At least that's sort of an interesting option. Did you ever think about quitting chess? Yeah, quite often, but it was never really a serious thought. Like I was always quite sure that at some point I'm gonna get back because, well, I've already put in so much work and time and effort, so it just seems kind of sad to just give it up. Even though when I'm having a hard time sometimes, like you have hard times in every job, and like they're much harder jobs than being a chess player. There's no doubt about it. Like, for example, working on a construction site or something where you're actually like risking your life on a daily basis. So, and I don't really feel like I'm in a place to complain. So having these thoughts is normal, but you just have to be grateful for what you actually have. How did you break through the 2300 level? Yeah, working with a lot of books. I've said this for numerous times already on the stream, but that's That was always my favorite strategy. By the way, I saw before, I think we have another person who joined the VIP Patreon program. So in case I overlooked it, my apologies, but I really appreciate all of your support. Also, I appreciate everyone in the chat who is yeah, giving me a great time. It's just great to talk to all of you. Have any recommendations to achieve a strategic game with white against someone who plays the dragon? Yeah, I actually do. Let me think. So, well, I mean, you could go for anti-Sicilians like bishop b5 check. That's, of course, one option. You could also go for queen takes d4, which is also quite an interesting system. Like Hare Krishna had many games here. He always went for this line with bishop e2, bishop g7. By the way, bishop h6 doesn't win a piece because white has queen c3. That's the important point. So bishop g7, short castle, and Hare Krishna always went for this h3 and then often rook d1, then sometimes c4, sometimes knight c3. So that's sort of a very solid way of playing. And in the dragon, well, bishop d3 is one option, but in the dragon specifically, I remember that Kramnik, I think, used to play like this, rook e1 and then bishop f1. Like, let's just say black goes like this. I guess bishop f1 works for now. There are no tricks. And if bishop d7, I think knight b3 was the idea. And in general, white wanted to get something like this, knight d5, c3, and bishop g5. The computers don't really find it anything special, but I think it could still be interesting, at least practically speaking. Like, it's not so easy to find a plan for black. I would say that many people would think about taking here, but this structure can actually also become quite dangerous for black. Like, if white manages to get c4, knight d4, then white is definitely better. Knight b4 doesn't really do anything, I guess, because of c3. But I think knight e5 is probably strong here, avoiding c4. So you would need to look into that. But that's one interesting line. I also saw that bishop e3 is quite possible here. And then to just go into a line like this, I think that was also an idea. And black goes a6, I think white wanted to take in most cases. I think that was one idea. And otherwise, white had some ideas like this as well, to push a4, then maybe to put the queen to f2. So this seemed quite interesting, even though it's also no objective advantage. Hope that helps. What's your favorite pair of socks? No idea. I guess just some usual white sneakers, which I usually wear at home. What do you think about the 4 knights with bishop e5? It offers quite tactical middle games and there are always advantages for white unless black is very prepared. Yeah, I played that quite often myself with white. Because it's also nice that you can actually play it against the Petrov as well. You can just play knight c3. So it's quite a practical opening. My problem nowadays is mostly knight d4. I think that's sort of my main issue, because here it becomes quite theoretical. The main line goes bishop c4 and c6, but also black has to know quite a lot of things. Like here bishop, what, is knight e5 not the move? Oh, bishop c5 is the move, sorry. c6 is also possible, by the way. I think I checked this line as well, so it's also quite interesting. But this is sort of the main theory, and queen e7, and like against a computer you will not achieve much here, and most of this theory is already sort of established, so this is quite difficult to get a game here. I saw that some like one Armenian grandmaster played this quite often. He just went for this and argued that this endgame is playable for white. And actually had quite good results. He tried to get a4, a5, bishop e3, something like that. So if you love endgames, that's maybe something you can check out, because this bishop on f3 could become quite active as well. I mean, white is just playing for 2 results, I would say. It's nothing special, but yeah, that's one option. Yeah. And the other lines, like after bishop e5, I had one game against Nisipiano, I think, where it was quite a nice idea. After bishop e4, short castle. I went for this line, bishop c6, and now d3. Which then sort of transposes kind of to the Berlin in some cases, like to the anti-Berlin. After bishop e5, knight f6, d3, bishop c5. This position is often quite similar. So that was kind of the idea. In my game against Nisipiano, he went bishop g4, which I knew that it's sort of a mistake because of quite a nice reason, actually. Can guys think here what would be the correct plan for white? Let me know if you guys can find it. So it's white to move, find the correct plan to sort of break this unpleasant pin. What would you guys play? No ideas? Gonna give you some more time. I think it's quite a cool idea. Well, 92, then I'm guessing that black could just take on f3, and then you have this ruined pawn structure. And the king is quite weak, so... Yeah, 92 bishop f3, and knight b1, well, then black sort of has a Berlin with an extra tempo. And I understand that the idea is probably to get knight d2, but it just loses quite a lot of time. And black can even save his bishop like knight d7 and then just go f6, bishop f7 back. And white just lost a lot of time. So your idea was just to go for this position deliberately. And then to get f4, I mean, I would be a bit worried about knight h5 here. But I'm not sure if you can get f4 so comfortably. Like f4 now, maybe queen h4 is there. Could be a bit dangerous. Eivind, I love your idea, queen e2. That's very interesting. Sort of a similar idea than what I played in the game. But it's a very cool idea. So the idea is knight d1, knight d3, and then perhaps to push g4. Because, well, first of all, the problem is that white probably cannot play g4 right away so well, because this at least seems sort of dangerous for white because f5 is coming. I don't think this works out so well for white. Maybe you could still go for something like this, but yeah, seems a bit dangerous. So that's why queen e2 could be an interesting idea. Yeah, this seemed very scary. 91, 93. Yeah, this idea is quite cool. Let me just give you one example where it can actually come from the other side. Namely, in this line, if white goes d3, and now this line right here. Because here actually black has a similar idea, to go queen e7. This is, I think, one of the main moves here, and to go knight d8, knight d6. So maybe this is how Eivind also found the idea here. But I saw that Matt already pointed out the correct idea, or at least probably the best idea, which I also played in the game. It's king h2. And the idea is to play rook g1 and then g4, when white is actually launching quite an attack himself. Let me just see if I can find the game. I think it was here. I played it with king h1. Okay. I played it with king h1, but still with the same idea. I'm actually curious now which king move the computer prefers. Actually, king h1, and I might... No, it's not so clear. Yeah, it's not entirely clear which square is better. King h2 seems also quite reasonable. But in a position like this, yeah, maybe then the king would be safer on h1. Maybe that's what the computer is saying. Because I still sort of remember that this is the move. But also now the engine says that queen e2 is actually quite strong. I guess with the... Well, now g4 is probably a threat as well. Like, let's just say black goes a5, then after g4, this doesn't work as well because white has queen e3. So queen e2 is another nice idea. But I played king h1, and this is how the game continued. And I actually had quite a big advantage. At some point, at least. Later on, I was a bit worse, but this... At least he was under some pressure. Rook g4 would have been much stronger at some point to play like that. But yeah, I sort of got carried off, I think. I don't know what I was even saying, but I guess the main conclusion is that bishop e5 is certainly playable, but you need to find something in knight d4. That's the main problem. Yeah. Because this position is also not so easy. So I like this idea with bishop c6 just to get this sort of structure. Black shouldn't go bishop g4, by the way. Like rook e8 is much better. And then to go for this typical maneuver, knight d7, knight f8. So yeah. You're all learning, guys. I hope so. Then my mission is accomplished. What's my best chess memory? Maybe becoming GM. That's at least in the top of my best memories. So let me see if there were any questions from before. Again, if I missed some of your questions, just let me know in the chat. I'm having sometimes a hard time answering all of them because there were just quite a couple of them. I saw that Cameron Davis wrote, "Hi Felix, just wanted to say I've been watching you for a while now and congratulations on 5,000 subs. Really do love the content that you make. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much." That's why I'm doing it, so that you guys can enjoy it, and hopefully that you're finding value in it and that you're able to learn something from the content. Any advice for handling psychology in classical, for instance, when playing high-rated opponents and avoiding trying to bail out with a draw offer instead of pressing for the win? Yeah, tough question to answer. I mean, I guess everyone sort of has this problem, myself included, that if you're playing against a stronger opponent, you always have this sort of respect. But you need to make it clear that everyone is human after all. Like I have luckily the experience to play against top players. And what I sort of realized is, of course, they're extremely good at chess, like, of course, the best humans in the world. And it's crazy how good they understand every aspect of the game. But still, they also do mistakes. They also still do make mistakes. This is what you need to realize. And also, I myself make a lot of mistakes. And many grandmasters still make foolish mistakes quite often. You need to realize that, and that they are certainly beatable. And you need to sort of implant that thought into your mind. Of course, easier said than done, but just try to think about it. What do you think about Nakamura making a commenting video on your video? It was nice to see, especially that he agreed on, I guess, most of my points. And Hikaru himself has always been a sort of vocal person about this whole topic about money in chess. So it was of course very nice to see that that it was interesting enough for him to react to it. Yeah, let's see what you guys are saying. Hi Felix, I really love your videos. I'm going to use your D4 repertoire in the upcoming months for my first over-the-board tournaments. Glad to hear it. Let me know if you find success in it. Just comment on some video. I'll be happy to know. Always looking forward to your feedback. Because it's really nice for me to hear that, well, first of all, if something is working very well for you, then of course it's a pleasant thing to hear. But also if something is not working well for you, then I'm happy that I can learn something for the future. So always happy to hear feedback. And good luck for your over-the-board tournaments, of course. How much lines do you calculate in classical and blitz games? I always miss opponent moves when I try to calculate and sometimes find it counterintuitive. Yeah, I guess in faster time controls anyway, calculation, there's not really much time for it. You just have to rely on your intuition. And I think that also for classical, like it's actually sometimes quite helpful to rely more on your intuition and less on your calculation. I mean, it should still sort of be a balance, but often calculation tends to get in the way because you're just overcomplicating things in many cases. Just a second. Hope that was helpful as well. So, Hikaru lost to Rose Atwell in Freestyle Friday. Interesting. Well, she's also quite young and talented, so it's nice to hear that these youngsters have sometimes quite the upsets in those online tournaments. The youth is coming. What do you think about Shortcast after 94 in the Fortnite Spanish? Yeah, that's also another of the lines which have been quite popular for some time. It's probably one of the best approaches if you're trying to get a game. I never really looked into it that much because I'm just sort of a fan of two bishops in most cases. And this sort of position felt always, yeah, I mean, pretty okay for black, even though white definitely has some ideas on his own. Like, I think the main line continues something like this. When white goes for bishop g5 and then I think d5. And yeah, often a position like this arises when white tries to regroup his knight to c4 and put pressure on d6. So it's interesting, but also I think one issue for me was that there was this move c6, which I think was quite annoying as well. And after bishop c4, I think now it's time to take and go d6. But yeah, at least now white gets sort of a playable game. I think d3 maybe it looks logical. Maybe b5 was the better move here. I think b5 was the idea. Because now you would probably get the bishop pair like this again. I also remember that bishop e2 was one move. Here. Bishop d3 was also a move here as well. To go some sort of this position. It looks a bit awkward, but still quite a few strong players have played it. I saw another question earlier. I cannot seem to find it now anymore, but I think it was also interesting. What I recommend in the fried liver for black. And, well, unfortunately, you do have to go for d5. Bishop c5, this Traxler gambit is not entirely correct. I think this is sort of the problem nowadays, that white just goes back with his bishop. And it's not sufficient compensation. But still, for blitz or bullet, it might be enough. But you have to go for d5, probably, yeah. And here, knight a5, yeah. Bishop e5, and well, c6 is very theoretical, this line. I saw that Nguyen Taiwan, the Czech theoretician, played bishop d7 against Yi in the Prague Masters, and actually had quite a good position after some time. So that's certainly a sideline which you can check. I think the main move is queen e2, and Van played something like this, I think, and then went for long castle, and it seemed like he had pretty good compensation. So that might be one interesting line. Do you compare yourself with old friends from school? From example, school, would you sometimes wish that you were studying? Also, what would you study? I would say that most of my friends are anyway from chess. So this comparison probably is not really the case. In general, I don't really try to compare myself to other people. But yeah, of course, sometimes I think about what would be without chess, basically. Yeah. What else I could do. And there are a couple of things that would interest me. History has always been one of my favorite subjects at school. So that would be something I would be interested in studying, even though it would probably be quite hard to sort of find a profession with a history degree. But it's just a topic which I'm really interested in. Same with like geography and geopolitics in general, finances as well. So I guess I would go in that sort of direction. But I'm really happy with where I'm currently at, so no plans to change that for now. Yeah, I hope, Sebomir, that I also answered your question now. So I'm sort of sticking with chess for now, and well, maybe something else comes in the future, but for now I'm really happy with how things are going. What's the difference between all super GMs and Magnus? I mean, he earns 7 out of 7 in 960 chess. How is he so much better in all? Well, I think that he's just, well, in my opinion, he's probably the best player of all time. Still, of course, Kasparov and Fischer are big contenders as well, but I think that still, it's just my opinion, that Magnus is just still on another level. And he's just, well, for sure he's the best we currently have, yeah, that's for sure. And that's why he's just much better than everyone else. But how Magnus made 9 out of 9 in freestyle chess, I mean, that's still sort of unbelievable to me. Like, it's just crazy. What's your recommendation against the Catalan? Yeah, that one got lost from before. I saw the message, but then I just forgot, I have to say. So, to make it short, against the Catalan, I would propose the Bogo Indian. You can, again, check out the video I made on that. And yeah, just to give you guys a brief overview, in the video for VIP patrons, I discussed many different lines. My idea was to give just a very flexible repertoire. So I discussed, of course, knight d2, bishop d2, also knight c3 from the Nimzo move order as well. I can give you some brief spoilers. For example, after knight c3, I recommended a very unusual bishop c3, and black is actually a very interesting non-theoretical game like this. This is one spoiler I can give you. After knight d2, I gave many different ideas for black as well. One of them being short castle a3, bishop e7, and this line, which is quite interesting. And also this line with queen e7. And here I gave quite a new idea, which I think is still not fully well known. So I think you can surprise many opponents there. So I'm quite happy with the Bogo here. But yeah, against the Catalan itself, so if you start from this position, I always thought that giving a check is always quite a good thing to do, and just to go back and just to go for this line, because black has just many different options, many different setups. You can always go for the stone wall as well, which is always one option. To go for 94 and f5, which computer doesn't always really like, but I always thought it's quite playable. So the idea in general is to provoke this bishop d2. I guess that could be clear, not to everyone, that if we go to this sort of main line, then in this position, white wants to play queen c2, knight d2, and then e4. So for example, like this, b6 and e4. This is what white wants. And if you include bishop e4 check, then in this line, actually the bishop is quite misplaced on d2, because white doesn't get knight d2. So that's the whole idea of including the check. Any recommendation against Queen's Gambit for black? Club level players 1600, 2000. I would always just try to go for the most classical variations. Like you can go for this Karlsbad structure, and here I would maybe recommend this line, like to go for short castle, and then this very old classical line, rook e8, knight d7, knight f8, knight g6. You can check out some of Artur Yusupov's games. I think he had quite some good results here and showed very nice understanding. So I would urge you to go for something quite classical. Or the Nimzo would also be one option. Can you show some over-the-board games that you played last tournament? I have all of them sort of in recap, so if you're interested in some of the recaps, I already recorded them, so I'm guessing that some of the people have already watched that, so I'm not going into that as much now. Hi Jakub, welcome to the stream. Hope you guys enjoy. Is there any way to fight against a horrible Alapin? Yeah, that's sort of a nightmare which many Sicilian players have. I always thought that this line is actually quite interesting because it allows Black to have quite dynamic play, which he often doesn't have in the Alapin. The idea is that it's sort of a pawn sacrifice. For example, if c4, Black goes e6, and in a position like this, Black will have quite nice compensation because of the d4 square and because of his lead in development. So that's the idea here, and I think that bishop e5 is sort of the main move. Now I think that knight d7 was the idea. And white can go for something like c4. And if I'm not entirely wrong, now Black even here goes for some e6. Or maybe it was g6. But at some point he gives the pawn. Let me see if there are any games here. b5 it seems. No, that was not what I checked. I guess that bishop d7 was the main move. And now it was maybe something again with e6 to sacrifice the pawn and play for compensation. So I think this line can be checked. This could be quite interesting. Now I remember. Queen a4 was another move. When now after knight d7, is it knight d7? I think now you go for something like this. And at some point you get knight b6, maybe. Or was it b6? I just want to show you what I checked here. Yeah, exactly. This is what I wanted to get to. Some structure like this, which looks totally ridiculous for the Black side. But it actually, this bishop on b7 then often opened up. Black had some ideas like knight g4, some threats on h2 or exchange sacrifices on f3. Now I remember this is what I was seeing. At some point I analyzed this line. So this was quite interesting, at least for the Black side. Yeah, I've played the bird in one classical game. I played 1 of 4. I actually won with that. So, but that was a one-time experience. Sorry, Neurotoxin, I missed your question about the bishop c4 Sicilian. Can you perhaps pose the question again? On move 2. Okay, on move 2. No, I see. So on move 2, then Black has a couple of options. I guess that most white players would then play d3 or knight f3. I think that in most cases it makes sense to go for something like this. And you always have the option to go d5 right away. But I guess a more solid way is to go with bishop e7 and then maybe castle first and then only to go d5. And also this move d6 is also an option. Like, let's say you don't want to go for that. Even though d5 is probably the best move here, you can also go for a more close position like this. Then maybe play a6, b5 and try to get some play on the queen side. Hey Felix, congrats on the 5K subs. My question for you is, do you think you could ever reach a point in chess where you're able to completely separate your emotions from the results on the board? No, I don't think so. I don't know if there are many people that can actually do that. Like, to completely separate them, I think it's almost impossible. And also, I'm not sure if it's actually any good then, because you need to have some sort of emotional aspect, I would say, as well. Otherwise, you will probably not be ambitious enough to continue if you don't like really feel emotions after you have some bad results. What do you think about the repertoire for Black Kings Indian and Sicilian 4 Knights? I switched to the Sicilian from French because I like playing for the win. And what would you recommend against anti-Sicilians? Well, first of all, if you stop playing the French because you want to play for win, then I would ask what sort of the problem is in the French, because for me always the French seems like a very good opening to play for a win. But overall, your repertoire just sounds like you're looking for very complicated positions and more dynamic positions. So from that regard, it's probably a good idea, because the French often is more strategical. Ever faced the Alekhine? Which variation sounds best to you? Yeah, a couple of times, but not so often. In most cases, I would go for this line with knight f3. I think that's the most solid approach. And actually, the game we saw earlier with the king march from short against Timman, I think this was g6 and bishop c4. I think that was also the line there. So I would play like that. The main move is taking in c6. And here, again, bishop c4 is possible, but bishop e2 just gives white like a long-term nice edge, because the knight on d5 is sort of strange. And white has more space. If knight d7, it was important to keep on this knight with knight f3, because white has more space, and usually the side which has more space also wants to keep more light pieces on the board, more minor pieces on the board. Because it's simply going to be harder for black to actually place his pieces somewhere, because white has more space. And here also this knight doesn't really know where to go, because then c4 will come and the other knight is a bit awkward. So in general, it's a good idea that if you have more space, you shouldn't really trade knights or bishops, unless it's like a very, very good trade for clear reasons. But that's just sort of a rule which can be applied in most cases. What do you think about viewer games? Yeah, we can definitely do that in the future. I've been planning to do that for quite some time. I was just very, very busy recently, and I also wanted to shift more my focus to long form videos where I can actually prepare something and show you guys in a video format, which I think also has advantages for you, because you can sort of review it very often and you have it in some sort of compact format as a video. So I've been trying more to do some very educational stuff rather than playing, but it would also be, I guess, educational to play against you guys and analyze the games. What do you think about the knight f3 d3 line in the Caro-Kann for white? Very interesting. I played that myself as well. I think that most black players are going to the endgame, but this can be surprisingly dangerous for black, because the king often goes to c2, where it's actually quite nicely placed, and white just tries to gain some space on the queen side, maybe put a knight to c4, and it can often go quite wrong for black. So it's an interesting line, but black also has other options, like g6 is one move, bishop g4 here still is quite reasonable, queen c7 is another idea. So but yeah, overall I like the d3 line. Don't have anything against it. Probably black should go for the endgame and then choose some setup wisely. Like I saw that some people have been going for some f5 business. I think it was like g6 was one option, and then there was bishop g7 f5. Other ideas were like this, that black often pushes some g5 and h5. So you should really be familiar with the plans with black if you want to play that. Follow up to the Queen's Gambit. Follow up to the Queen's Gambit, which we talked about earlier. I saw that one user explained he had some difficulties here. So which sort of move order did you go for? You went for g6, knight e6, knight g7 now. Yeah, there this plan with the minority attack works better. In general, I would say that if white puts the knight to f3, then in most cases he's gonna play for the minority attack. But if he goes for knight e2, then in most cases he's gonna play for f3, e4. I think the main reason for that is, like, let's just say a position like this. Here the knight on f3 is quite useful, because it can later on go to e5 and support b5, and then pawn c6 is going to become a weakness. But with the knight on e2 this works less well, so let's go back here once again. Let's just say knight f8, b4. Even if here goes something like knight g6, then b5 is not as dangerous because white cannot attack this pawn with knight e5. I think that's sort of one of the main differences here. I'm not sure if I can actually attach a PGN file to my videos. I don't think YouTube really allows that, to attach any files. So if I'm having any games which I cover from a tournament, I always include the link to the Lichess game in the description. And I think that also works quite well. Problem with the French is the exchange variation. Black equalizes, but it's hard to win. Yeah, that's sort of what most people think. And I also used to think like that. But I see many games which white is also losing with the French exchange. Like, especially this line with knight c6 has sort of the reputation that black also gets quite a fight. Because there is this idea for black that often you want to go bishop g4 and then queen d7 and long castle. And this can become quite sharp. So yeah. Also this line, I'm not sure that it's like so completely over. Of course, white could go for something like super symmetrical like this, but yeah, it's still a game. Many pieces on the board. So do you have a book recommendation for chess psychology and strategy? Yeah, there was this book by Jana Krivets, who is, I think, a Slovenian women grandmaster. And she's also a psychologist. I think the book is called something like Chess for Life or something like that. But if you search for Jana Krivets, I think you're going to find it. So she's actually an educated psychologist and a strong chess player as well. And she went through many different psychology aspects. That book was really, really good. Really enjoyed it. I've been a second for Pentala Krishna since one person has asked. Sep City Life, welcome to the stream. Hope you enjoy. What books for strong amateurs? Strong amateurs, I would go into the direction of Dvoretsky as well. I mean, he's the type of author who has many books, and you cannot really go wrong, whatever you're buying. Some of Agar's books are also quite good, but my personal favorite is Dvoretsky. Instead of g6, knight g7, you went for instead of knight g6, you went for that plan. Yeah. Okay, so in this Queen's Gambit we were talking about. So here, yeah, of course, there's also this plan with 96 and then g6, knight g7, bishop f5. But also here, like with the knight on f3, this is probably a bit uncomfortable, yeah, because white will get 95 and this pawn on c6 is going to become difficult to defend. Again, with the knight on d2, e2, this would be sort of a different story. Yeah, Jeremy Silman's books are also good. I think I only read one of his, but I've heard quite a lot of good things about them. Yeah, I could also make a Lichess study to some of the things I'm showing in the video. I just thought that no one really actually wants to review the games after that, and that the video is enough for most people. So I didn't really realize that that's a thing. But I'll think about it. Maybe I can include this sort of Lichess study. That will be one option for you guys to have the games as well. As white, Niels plays 1 e4, but has difficulties with e6 and with b6 and e6. Yeah, let's start with b6, because I think against g6 is going to be easier to find something very, very sharp. Against b6, I know this one quite nice idea, which is this. All black players are going to go for bishop e4. I guess you can also start with bishop d3. But the position I'm referring to is this, and now bishop d3. If you just want to have a solid advantage, then you can just go for something like this. And queen e2, and if c5, c3, and white is just a bit better. But this is more aggressive approach. And the whole idea is that you want to go knight f6, knight d2. That's the whole idea of the variation. And now white is often playing for e5 ideas. I actually had one game here with white in a previous Austrian championship. And I think my opponent went d5, e5, and he went knight d7, I think. When after queen g4 already had a huge advantage. I think he just went back with the bishop like this. And the same ideas after knight e4. Again, queen g4, and I think that white is close to winning here already. So it's not so easy what black can in fact do here. I think it might still be sort of best to maybe go for a position like this. I mean, here black is at least is sort of solid, but still white has this huge center and attacking possibilities on the king side later on. So I don't think this like fully equalizes either. Maybe I would be thinking of going for something like this and then perhaps f4, f5. This would at least look interesting to me, practically. And against g6, while there are many aggressive setups, I guess the most aggressive one is the classical line with f4. And white usually develops like knight f3, bishop d3, short castle, or also knight f3 and then bishop e3, sometimes queen d2, a couple of different ideas. And black sort of has problems with developing the knight because sooner or later it's going to run into e5, which can be sort of problematic. So that's very aggressive. What else is there? Also, this line is quite aggressive with f3, where white is going for h4, h5 later on, queen d2, long castle. Many different ideas. Johnson, yeah, you're welcome. I think this is nice to know in the Carlsbad structure, that like if the knight is on e2, this b4, b5 plan is not really effective in most cases. On the other hand, you need to watch out for this f3, e4 plan, if the knight is on e2 in the Carlsbad. That's usually where the danger is there. Do you think the Ulvestad is an interesting deviation from the fried liver? Please correct me if I'm wrong. I am guessing that the Ulvestad is this line, right? If that's the case, which I strongly think it is, then I can totally tell you that it's a very interesting line. Because first of all, white players need to know this fantastic move, bishop f1, to actually get a chance for an advantage. Because bishop b5, b5, bishop b5 is actually already quite comfortable for black after queen d5. Because this bishop is hanging on b5 and also the pawn on g2 is hanging. Here black is already completely fine. Like white can go knight c3 and something like this. But in a position like this, I saw that the computer was even slightly preferring black. So white needs to know this move bishop f1 to even get a chance of an advantage. And now the old move was always knight d4, when there was always like a huge mess here. I think c3 was the move, h6, and now white had a couple of options. He could take on d4 or go knight f7. I think it was here as well. Then some position like this was perhaps how they were playing. But this didn't turn out to be so great for black. But now there is this new idea to take on d5 with the knight, which is actually quite an interesting new idea. And of course now white can take on d5 on b5. That's the whole idea, because there's no queen takes d5. And this always sort of seemed like it's just bad, but now with modern engines it has sort of been revived with bishop b7. And I think, well, now the knight on g5 is hanging. The best move for white is d4, I believe, which is already not so easy to understand. And after ed4, black will try to get some queen d7, long castle, and it's just very messy, but certainly playable. If white goes for something slow like d3, and now I'm just thinking it looks also quite logical, I think that bishop e7 was the idea here. And here to go knight d4. That was, I think, what I analyzed some time ago. When white is still not fully developed, and if knight d2, there's the idea of knight f4 in some cases. I'm guessing that's the idea here. Now I'm thinking what happens after knight e4, but maybe knight g2. No, that cannot work. Maybe knight g2. Because if king g2 f5, I have. And I was also thinking about queen g4, but again, f5 seems to be working. So again, I don't have an engine here. I'm not sure if this all works, but I know for a fact that this line is quite interesting. So you can definitely check it out. Would you end up posting an knight f3, b3 repertoire? Well, it sort of depends on how my next few weeks are gonna develop, because I'm gonna be commenting a big event in Austria, and probably not gonna have so much time there, and also not so much time before to record many things. So it could be that we're not gonna have so many videos to come. That's also why I wanted to post much more in this week. So that I thought, well, now you get Felix every day for 1 week, then maybe you need some break for like 2 weeks. Hi Stefan, welcome to the stream. Glad you made it. Yeah, Johnson, I'm glad that your advice gave you an extra 100 elo. Hopefully that's gonna work out in practice, those plans in the Cosput. You're welcome, Frank. I'm glad it was helpful. How should I choose between to learn Najdorf or Dragon as a 2100? Well, in the end, it's up to you to decide what you just enjoy playing more. So I guess a good way to start is just to go to play games in one opening. If you like it, you stick with it. If you like it, you can also try the other one. But at the end of the day, you will sort of figure it out what works best for you in practice. That's the most important aspect. Engines have refuted the Najdorf and the Dragon. That's news to me. Never heard that before. Okay, it's good to know that that you would prefer if I include a link in my analysis. It's also sort of a time issue because it does require some time to then, because as you all might know, I'm editing and posting all of my content and videos myself, so I'm already sort of running low on time. So then I'm always thinking that making a study, including the link and so on, it will also cost some time. So at the end of the day, I just prefer to put that time into something else. So time is always like the main issue when it comes to that. But I'm glad that you enjoyed, especially that one idea and the Queen's Gambit accepted. What do you think about a3 setups against e6 Sicilians? Well, there are many e6 Sicilians, so if you could be more specific against which ones? Because black has just so many different lines, it's hard to cover all of them. Yeah, just the dragon. Yeah, Najdorf is completely fine, of course, by engines. Dragon is not favored by engines, but still, I wouldn't say that it's refuted. Like, you still see many correspondence players playing it with normal results. Like, they're losing not so many games there as well. So I don't think it's losing. Of course, objectively, maybe it's a bit harder there, but at the end of the day, you're not playing against a computer. And against a human, the dragon could very well be quite interesting. Niels, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy my content. Great to hear. I have not done any Banter Blitz streams, no, not yet. Anyway, I've not really been streaming so much Blitz online, I would say. Generally, I'm not really playing that much Blitz nowadays. Because again, I don't really have the time for that. So yeah, a3 setups against Taimanov and Khan specifically. So against the Khan, well, there are many ways to play a3 here. The first one is even here, like a3 immediately is one move, which looks a bit strange, but the idea is that you just want to prepare either knight c3 or c4, and in both cases a3 is going to be a useful move. If black goes knight f6, then you have to go for knight c3, but now black cannot go to his typical Khan, because usually in the Khan he delays the development of the knight. So, and otherwise if knight c6, then c4 I think would be the idea, when black already has the knight on c6, which he doesn't always want in the Khan. And otherwise if b5, there are two funny ideas. The first one is the logical c4, which probably gives white a small edge in some line like this. I think white could give... Just got a notification that OBS disconnected, so let me go know if I'm still here, if you can hear and see me, because now I got a little bit scared, but I think it's still working. But yeah, let me know. So yeah, this was one idea in b5. The other quite funny looking move was a4. So white is just losing a tempo, but still this is not so easy for black to actually counter, because if b4, then the knight is not on c3 and black's pawn structure is now a little bit weak. White can go something like a5, and the pawn on b4 is a bit soft. And if they take, then a pawn on a6 could become a target in the future. So a3 here is interesting against the Taimanov. A3 is also quite a good system. I played that myself quite often in the past, and had pretty good results, because, well, you're just avoiding bishop b4, and then in most cases want to develop with bishop e3 and then maybe f4. Like, I think I had some games like this sometimes. And then you want to go queen f3, long castle. So I always like playing the system. I think it's quite a good idea. I think the very topical line is this queen c7. Now that I think about it, bishop e3 and now b5. This is, I think, one of the lines. Everything still works. Great. How many years did I take to get the Grandmaster title? I was, I think, 19 years at that time, 19 years of age. And well, I've been playing chess since I'm 5 years old, 5, 6 years old. So, well, in the first few years, I didn't train so much, of course, like I was a kid. But still, it took me like, yeah, 14 years, basically, 13 years of playing chess to become a Grandmaster. Do you think the Kalashnikov, both Bishop e7 and Bishop e6, is a good main repertoire for 2300 plus player? Or do you think it's way too easy to prep against it? Yeah, hard to say. Like I've checked the Kalashnikov as well some time ago. And well, the first thing is that I guess most players nowadays anyway are gonna go for the Rosalimo. So that's one thing which is very topical, and you need to know what you're doing there. And other than that, I think it makes a lot of sense if you combine playing the Kalashnikov and the Sveshnikov. I think that would be sort of the best way to approach it, because that is going to make your opponent's life also much harder. When it comes to the Kalashnikov itself, I think there's still quite a lot of flexibility for you here, because black has many different setups. So I think it would alone also be okay, but also somewhat risky, especially if you're playing in a tournament where your opponent can really prepare for you. If he has a lot of time to prepare, then it's an issue. If you're playing some league games, then it anyway mostly doesn't matter, because players are not gonna prepare so much against you. They just don't have the time or the knowledge who they're gonna play against. Hope that helps. What do you think about the e6 h5 setup in the Najdorf against the English attack as a main repertoire choice? Yeah, I've discussed that briefly in my latest video, I think. So it's this line, yeah. I think it's quite interesting. So this is what we're talking about. I actually believe that I recommended this in my Najdorf course back in the day. It was already quite long ago. I think I published it like 4 or 5 years ago for the online platform Chessamy. The course is in German. But I have not really revisited this line afterwards. But I think it's still somewhat of an interesting system. The idea is just that black wants to avoid g4 and g5 for good, but at the same time he's weakening his king side as well in the g5 square. So castling short is also going to be a bit more risky in most cases. What is a bit annoying for me is this line bishop c4, when then white is just going to castle short, when he can just play sort of positionally, and this h5 is a bit not perfect in this position, but it's still very much playable. And I also don't think that most, like at least not every player is going to play bishop c4, because most of them, because most of them are used to playing queen d2 and long castle. And in this case, I think something like this can be certainly interesting. I don't know, maybe queen c7 or b5. Because now white doesn't have this typical play with g4, g5, and black is just attacking pretty fast. Any insight on cheating issues? Yeah, it's tough. That's also one of the reasons why I'm not really playing online that much anymore, because I simply never know if I'm playing against a human or against a machine. But it's not really much we can do. I mean, I guess more controls, more safety measures, but it's simply not really getting much better, I feel like, which is a little bit frustrating, but still there's hope that maybe someday it's gonna be improved. Would you recommend the Sveshnikov to club players? Definitely, yeah. Sveshnikov was one of my first openings when I was like 8 or 9 years old, like the first serious opening I started to play. So I think it's a good choice. Always had pretty good results with it. think there should be quite a few courses or books on it. Also think that Krzysztof Silecki wrote a book on it, since I mentioned him before. In general, I always really enjoyed his work. So I think that would be something I could recommend. Do you think the Caro-Kann is enough against e4? Yeah, for sure. You can always play the Caro-Kann. Very solid opening. What do you think about the London system? It used to be much more interesting than it is nowadays. I'm gonna tell you why. It's just because now so many people play it. Like back many years ago, it was still sort of a very rare line which people didn't really know, and then it was really interesting to know to play it. Like that was the years when I enjoyed playing it the most, like 2015, 16, 17, when I was still quite young, and I first saw that many people picked it up. But nowadays, simply everyone knows what to do against it, and there are just many systems. But back in the day, it was super interesting. Nowadays, everyone is probably really gonna know what to do. What's my favorite chess piece? Probably the knight, I would say, because it can be very flexible. I like the knight. Is there any system setup you could recommend against 1d4 g6? I specifically would go for this line with knight f3, d6, and now c3, which is a very solid, some people might even say boring line, but it's simply way more positional than all of these Pearts and modern stuffs. With c3, the idea is that after knight f6, bishop d3, short castle. Short castle, this is how most people play. The position is in most cases going to be sort of symmetrical. Most black players go for, I think, knight d7 or knight c6, two options. And white is just going to slowly develop like h3, e5, rook e1. Then the knight usually comes to g3. And the positions are actually more similar to some sort of Italian or Ruy Lopez. But it seems like white got a pretty good deal out of it. And I always liked playing this system. Just what I didn't like here, I'm actually gonna spoiler something which this line I recommended in my one knight f3 course for white as well. And here I saw this very nice idea played by Rasmus Svane, which is after h3 e5 to go bishop c2. Sorry, I think it was rook e1 first. And after rook e8, bishop c2. That was the whole idea. Because the issue is if you go knight d2 first, well, let me start off by explaining that the computer says that d5 is the best move here, but I personally don't really like it. Because after knight e7, c4, I think knight h5, for example, black gets this typical play on the king side, and I'm not entirely sure about this position from a practical point of view. Computer likes it, but I don't really like to play it so much. The next thing is that after knight d2, now the issue is that black can go knight h5, and now this pawn on d4 is hanging. So now again, white probably has to go for d5, and again allow this sort of structure, which I don't think is so practical. The other possible move, which the computer still sort of likes, is knight b3, but then the knight is a bit awkward on b3, so I also didn't like that so much. So that's when I saw this move bishop c2 in that position. And at first I had a hard time understanding the point of it. But if black makes sort of a waiting move like h6, then white wants to go knight e2, and if knight h5, now the bishop is already in c2, so white can go knight f1, and now this queen is protecting the pawn on d4. So now black is not winning a pawn here. So that's the whole point of bishop c2, preparing knight d2, knight f1 without allowing this knight h5 and forcing d5. That was the whole idea. And if knight h5 now, then I think that white can go bishop e3 or bishop g5 as well. Then if f6, for example, just go back. Because white cannot do that immediately, because then I would guess that e4 is just hanging. Yeah, that's the point. Bishop c2 is my recommendation. Can you recommend movies about chess that are actually good? Oof, that's a tough one. About chess, I'm having a hard time now remembering something which I liked, but I can really recommend the documentary made about AlphaGo. So it's not about chess, but at least it's Go, so it's sort of similar. And you can find it on YouTube. It's the documentary about the big Go match where the first engine, I think it was the first Go computer, which for the first time beat a human. And it was actually like the by far best Go player in all time, basically. So really enjoyed watching that. But when it comes to chess, I also didn't really see that many movies. If you can call the, well, in German it's called the Schachnovelle. I guess it's something similar in English. It's a very famous book by Stefan Zweig. Maybe the chess novella. I'm not sure, but you can Google Stefan Zweig and chess and you're going to find it. And they made a German movie out of it. So that was really good. I remember that one. I went to the movies for this. I'm not sure if it's been subbed to English, but that will be something to check out. What do you think about the newest ChessBase program, ChessBase 18 compared to ChessBase 17? Also, is the mega database worth it compared to manually compiling games from Twig? Yeah, I've only recently started using ChessBase 18. I was stuck with ChessBase 16 always because I was just very familiar with it and liked it. But now I switched because they changed this file format from CBV to CBV.2, and it's not possible to open the files all the time. So I sort of had to switch. But I mean, the program looks basically the same. They changed the design a bit. But I'm not currently using that many functions of ChessBase 18, which are quite new and more complicated. I just don't really need them at the moment, and also don't understand many of them because it's, well, most of what I'm doing is just going through games and using the online database, using my engine, and all the other things are not that important for me in most cases. But still, they fixed some things with ChessBase 18, which I think are now, like, it's running better for some computers. So it's still, of course, very good. And I think that you should get the games from Twig because I'm not sure if the Mega database has an option to like manually update the games. So I'm always updating them like weekly to have them in my Megabase from Twig. Mate, yeah, sorry question already, but now I can answer it. Sorry, I didn't hear. Did you answer my question? My suggestions to be better in standard in over the board blitz and rapid. I'm around 2000 online. I'm 2300 on Lichess. Yeah, just find a study routine which works for you, which you enjoy. I already talked about it earlier on the stream that if you do something which people are recommending you, but you don't actually enjoy it, then probably you're not going to stick to that program for long. So you just need to find something which you enjoy and which you feel like also you're profiting from. So you've read the short story you talk about. Yeah, you can try to check for the movie. That was really well played. Like the actor really did a great job. It was in German. Maybe there's an English sub version with that. Yeah, I do know Markus Raga personally for many years actually. Like when I was 13 or 14, I started working with him, and in the meanwhile, we've become very good friends. We're also teammates in the national team, so we know each other for quite some time. And yeah, in general, in the Austrian team, everyone is getting along very well with anyone else. So we always have quite a nice atmosphere. Just gone mad. You missed most of the stream. Sorry to hear, but you can still replay it later on. Who's your favorite Super GM? I think currently it's still probably Magnus. How often do you solve studies? Yeah, not really regularly, but at least on a weekly basis, I would say. Yeah, I saw one more question from Frank, and after that, I think we're gonna call it a day pretty soon. So Frank was asking, how do I improve my psychology in positions that I know I am winning in, but where the opponent has forcing defensive moves, thinking about against Slav for black with early bishop f5, bishop g4. So I guess those two things don't really necessarily have to do with each other. So one opening aspect and one general aspect. I would say the most important thing is that recognizing when you're winning, that you should still be concentrated, of course, and not sort of get too happy too early, because I think Laska was the one who said that the hardest games to win are actually the ones where you're already winning, which in most cases turns out to be the case. So staying focused, I guess, is the most important thing you need to consider when you're winning, and trying to be practical as well. Like often you try to calculate the forced win, but sometimes a more simple solution and not getting into time trouble is also something which you want to do. So yeah, Sandfox, yeah, it's already quite late here. Still need to do some work, but if you do have one more question, I can definitely try to answer that. If you have anything on your mind. In the meanwhile, I can answer a question from earlier. Anything you would avoid playing as black versus 1e4 against a 200, 300 points weaker player? Nothing really. I mean, the only thing I can say is that if you're playing against 200, 300 rated, less rated opponent than yourself, then often you don't really need to do that many special things. Like often you want to play like very aggressive and very ambitious, but in many cases that can also backfire. Like often it's kind of useful to just try to play like you would usually do, and then anyway many chances will later on appear. So don't try to deviate from your usual style, I would say. If my playing strength is around If my playing strength is around 1900 to 2000, how would you recommend for me to enhance my game to become master level? Well, I would say it's the same like before, just trying to find a study routine that works for you, that is fun for you, and that you can actually stick to, yeah. Because otherwise, if you have like a method you don't really enjoy, but you think it's still helping you, then at the end of the day, you will probably stop working on it because, well, you simply don't enjoy it. So that's why I think it's always important to enjoy your study method. For me, that's always been working with books. So. What's your opinion on 1c5 against d4, c4, knight f3? So if white starts with d4, you mean that black goes c5? No, I've never played against Lila Queen odds. Yeah, I'm sure it's interesting to watch. I just didn't really have the time yet to do so. Is there an aspect of the game that you don't enjoy studying, and how did you overcome it or make it more fun? I don't really enjoy like analyzing some super forcing lines where I don't really understand much. Like that's just often the case. So other than that, I also don't really like to sit at positions to solve like some heavy calculation stuff. I was always more sort of interested in like end games or more strategical ideas, which come easier to my mind just, and calculation is just something which is not really enjoyable for me to work on. So Sandfox, back to your question. So what was it? So it was 1d4 c5, yeah. I don't really like it, I have to tell you honestly. Because after d5, white simply gains a lot of space. Now black would have two options. One is to go e5. Well, now if white takes, then black can just take back with the pawn, or even this pawn perhaps, and so black doesn't have any problems, but white just continues to have the space, and it's not really great for black, I would say, because white just has much more space, and it doesn't seem like such a good King's Indian for black, because also white didn't play c4 yet, and this bishop could also go out to b5. You could also go with g6 and play a position like this, which I also think is not that fantastic. Like, white has many options here. I like to move bishop e5 check here as well. And no matter what piece black puts on d7, white is gonna a4, gonna go a4, and then just gonna go back. And now this knight on d7 is a bit misplaced. And if bishop d7, it's sort of the same. If now a6, then the knight on b8 is misplaced, because it cannot go to a6, e7. You go knight f6 first, yeah? Okay. So if you want to play the Benko or the Benoni, then yeah, you don't like e5. But yeah, if you start with d4, c5, and now knight f6, then white has the extra option to go knight c3. That's the sort of problem with this move forward. So you could just start with knight f6, and I don't really see the downside. And then just go for this. I think that would be the more practical approach. So against, interesting, against knight c3, you play d6 and here a6, yeah? And if white goes for a4, I'm guessing g6, maybe knight f3 or h3. Still, some position like this, I would not be entirely sure. Like, it's for sure playable, but white has just more space, and it seems like white has the easier play, like maybe bishop f4. I guess black can make it work, maybe queen b6 or queen c7, but it wouldn't be my style necessarily to play like that. But again, I don't see the downside if you start with knight f6, so I think that would be a better way to start, and then just to play either the Benoni like with g6, or the Benko is also possible, of course, or immediately e6. And then you go for e6. Okay, I'm learning many different things here. e6 I've not seen before. And if I go knight f3 here, I'm curious. I'm not entirely sure what you want to do here, because still if you take and, I don't know, bishop g4, maybe bishop f5, but it just all seems a bit worse, like even a position like this. White has just more space and quite easy play. So again, I would play knight f6 on move 1. So g6, bishop g7 first. Yeah, and here. I mean, a position like this we had, yeah. I just think that it's a bit better for white. Just my conclusion. Done any study of h4 against the Benko to decline it? a4. Yeah, I saw some options like that as well. Well, mostly I used to play this move knight f3 and this line with queen c2 to decline like this. a4 specifically, I don't think I've checked just yet. I think black usually wants to go b4 if I'm not wrong. bc is also possible, but usually b4 is the idea. But yeah, nowadays I think the best for white is to go for this e3 line. I think this is quite unpleasant for black. So last question, which I'm gonna answer, unless Sandfox is gonna make a follow-up. What is your opinion on the 4 knight Sicilian, particularly in lines where I get isolated queen spawn? Such structures are not my key strength, but it's an area I want to improve in. Yeah, 4 knights is of course a big line, a lot of theory there. And I'm guessing the IQP position you mean are after a3 or bishop e2. Those are possible, which, yeah, you can play, but I think you also have some other options, like d6 would also be one idea perhaps. But in general, I always thought that this position is quite normal to play for black. Like, of course, pawn on d5 is a weakness, but maybe you can just have a couple of looks at some looks at some high-level games. Like I think Boris Gelfand had some good games here. I would recommend that. Yeah, Sandfox, you can though play against the London. You can also play for c5. Like what you can do, what would be quite smart, I think. Then just play c5, and now you can go for d6, and now you'll have probably a better version compared to before. Because now the bishop is already in f4. So you could at least do this. Okay, white has e3, but here black also has some interesting options, yeah? Like some time ago, I checked, I think some ridiculous move like knight d5 is one option, I think. You can check that out. Yeah, Mustreader released a podcast with me today. I'm already looking forward to checking that out. I think he put in a lot of work into producing it once again. So should be quite interesting. Okay, so final question in the Caro-Kann. What I can recommend. I think what is always a nice system is to go for the exchange. That's one option. And to go bishop d3, bishop 4, it's very easy to learn and you're always going to get a game. And otherwise, again, the very classical variation is something you can look into. Of course, there's some theory here, but also many ideas. I think it's nice to have some solid systems, like, for example, the exchange combined with maybe this line with d3, or also with the 4 knights. I think those 3 would be my favorites. I would just look for model games with the online database. That's basically it. Yeah, Sandfox, queen b6 is also a bit of an issue. Yeah? It's not entirely clear there. I think white can go knight c3. So I'm just thinking, you can check out this knight d5 move, which I just pointed out. I think it's not maybe perfect, but still quite interesting. So knight d5 was the idea, and if bishop g3, now queen b6 was the point, because now there's no knight c3. You can definitely check this out. I think it's at least a funny idea to play. If they take here, I think black is already completely fine, because you can just take on c5 next. All right, guys, so that was it for today. I hope that everyone enjoyed the stream. Hope I could answer as many questions as possible from you guys. And yeah, thank you all for staying here so long. It's already quite late. So really appreciate all of you guys. And gonna end the stream. Have a good night, everyone. And